whole year to travel around the world, experiencing its most spectacular places, each at the ideal time of year. It's something many people dream about, but for us, that dream's about to come true. We're setting off on a journey around the planet as thrilling, thought-provoking, and wondrous as the world itself. We'll travel to some of the world's wildest places, some of its most sophisticated ones too, and each we're going to visit in exciting ways so that we can experience its beauties to the full. There is no doubt about it. This is going to be the journey of a lifetime. We're going to travel from Paris to the beautiful winter world of Lapland, then to Carnival in Venice and even further south to see the ancient glories of Egypt. A visit to Jerusalem at Easter and the lost city of Petra bring the first leg of our journey to a close. Our journey and our year both begin just outside of Paris, 24 kilometers downstream on the River Seine. It's just before dawn on a cold winter's day. But this is a special day. It's New Year's Eve and we're on our way to the famous Parisian New Year's celebrations, which will get our journey off to the perfect start. Our captain is at the helm, and we're starting as we need to continue. Not just wonderful places, but wonderful ways to get to them too. Outside, she may be no beauty, but she's been flying up and down the River Seine for almost 100 years. And on the inside, our converted river barge has everything you could ask for. Breakfast is served. We can sit back and prepare ourselves for Europe's city of light and sophistication. Paris. Soon, we see Paris's most unmistakable landmark, the Eiffel Tower. And just before it, the original Statue of Liberty, to remind people that Paris isn't just a city of romance, but of revolutionary ideals too. Gustave Eiffel built his tower for the Paris exhibition in 1889 to be the tallest and most daring construction on Earth. It was, but most Parisians thought it was also the ugliest. Gustave Eiffel was reviled in the press and plans were made to tear his tower down immediately after the exhibition. Eiffel would be amazed to learn that his tower survived. Now, over a century later, has become the most recognized and loved landmark of his city. As our barge travels further upstream past the Eiffel Tower, toward the heart of Paris, it passes under some of the city's 35 bridges. On the usually crowded riverbanks, only a hardy few are out with us, savouring the cold winter beauty of the Seine and this glorious city. Finally, we reach the real core of Paris, the two islands in the middle of the Seine, where 2,000 years ago the Celtic tribe of the Parisii once lived, and where the Romans first built this city. Above us rises the breathtaking Gothic architecture of Notre Dame, Our Lady, the soul of medieval Paris, built here in the 12th century. Leaving the barge to go ashore, we'll be able to take a closer look at this magnificent old cathedral. The building of Notre Dame was started in 1163 and took 2 centuries to complete. Then, as the centuries passed, it began to slowly decay. By the 19th century, it was a crumbling ruin. It was this ruin that inspired Victor Hugo to write his famous story, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He also lobbied tirelessly for the cathedral's restoration. It was lovingly rebuilt in the 1840s and 50s. Notre Dame now stands once again revealed in all its perfect Gothic splendor, watching, as it has done for centuries, the life of Paris ebb and flow around her. Night has fallen. In just a few hours, at midnight, the city will erupt with light and joy. From the Eiffel Tower to the Champs-Élysées, the streets of the city are filling as Parisians prepare to welcome in the new year. At the Brasserie Beaufinger, one of the most beautiful old restaurants Paris is famous for, they are getting ready for the festivities too.
Pour tous les clients, nous mettrons des amuse-bouches, donc la mise en place est...
The head waiter teaches his staff about the dishes they'll be serving tonight.
Et là où il y avait les bouteilles d'eau minérale, vous avez de la rillette de saumon, et vous avez...
Every one of them is mouth-watering.
Vous mettez votre petite...
Cooking and eating in Paris is a serious business, and that, they say, is because they do it better than anyone else in the world.
On l'a pas présenté là parce que...
With only a few hours until midnight, there's a chance to get a taste of the Brasserie Beaufinger in action. Dinner
Bonsoir, bienvenue chez votre...
is served. It's almost midnight, but there is still time to get to our vantage point in the Champs-Élysées. It's the moment we've been waiting for. The chimes of midnight ring out. In a blaze of fireworks, the new year begins, and with it, 4-hour journey of a lifetime. And now we head far north into the Arctic Circle to a very remarkable place. Lapland, a beautiful still world of ice, snow, and the boundless Arctic sky. We're in search of the ultimate experience of winter. We've certainly come to the right place, and at exactly the right time, late February. In December and January, Lapland languishes in total darkness. But now, after the long Arctic night, finally, there is light. To appreciate the special exhilaration of this frozen landscape to the full, we need February's pale sun and the Arctic special mode of transport. Lapland is the perfect vantage point to see one of the most stunning sights in the world, the Aurora Borealis, or Northern Lights. And we're on our way to a remarkable hotel designed specially for viewing.
The temperature is about 25 below 0 centigrade. To most people this would not seem the right moment for a swim. Many Finns would disagree.
This is the land of saunas, of ice swims, followed by a hasty jog back to the baking heat inside. For the circulation, the Finns say, there is nothing better. The beating with birch twigs gets the blood going even faster. And when the heat gets too much, it's time for another icy plunge. To people not used to these Arctic climes, this may all seem a little extreme, but the Finns swear by their saunas. In fact, Finland has one of the healthiest populations in the world, and its saunas may well be the reason. The freezing forests we're crossing on the way to our hotel may seem inhospitable, but not to the people who have always lived in this Arctic land. The Sami, Europe's only indigenous people. Pentti, a Sami herder, is going to take us to our final destination. But first, he's going to give us a glimpse of the Sami way of life, and the animal which is at the heart of it, the reindeer. Reindeer, quite simply, are everything to the Sami. Pentti, like all his people, has lived with them, looked after them, worn their skins, eaten their meat, and sung songs about them for as long as he can remember. The Sami, like many indigenous people, have had difficult times over the centuries. Repeated attempts were made by missionaries and governments to end their way of life and to settle and change them. these interventions, the Sami have clung fiercely to their culture and have adapted it with remarkable success to the modern world. They successfully fought to keep their language and religion, and even if they have snowmobiles now, they use them to do what their ancestors did for centuries: round up their reindeer. With the pale Arctic sun dropping towards the horizon, it's time to head for our hotel. On this final leg of our trip through Lapland, we're going to travel in the time-honoured Lappish way. Pentti has brought his reindeer sleigh to give us the perfect experience of Lapland's magical winter vistas. Temperatures can fall to as low as -55 degrees Celsius here, so a hotel made of ice is not as unlikely as it sounds, and that is exactly what they have built here at Kakslautinen in northern Lapland. It's time to join up with some other adventurous visitors and check in for the night. The Ice Hotel is fully booked all winter long. The rooms, just like the hotel lobby, are made of solid ice. Inside, it's a toasty 5 degrees below zero. Positively tropical compared to the Arctic cold outside. With the latest thermal clothes and sleeping bags, hardy travellers are guaranteed a good night's sleep. As our fellow guests at the Ice Hotel settle in for the night, we're still in search of our final great Arctic experience. This heated glass igloo has been built here for a very special purpose. It's the perfect place to contemplate one of the natural world's most spectacular shows, the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. Caused when solar winds hit the Earth's magnetic field, there are few sights in the world as beautiful. Lapland has given us the vision we were in search of. February is coming to a close, so it's time to head to our next destination and another spectacular show. Not natural this time, but man-made. One of the most extravagant celebrations anywhere on Earth. Carnival in Venice. Every year, for just 1 week in February, this exquisite floating city on the banks of the Adriatic Sea puts on one of the most fantastic parties in the world. The centerpiece of this wild masquerade of costumes and make-believe is a series of masked balls which take place all over the city in its elegant Renaissance palazzos. People come from all over the world to get a glimpse of them, but very few will get to experience a ball the way we will. But that is tonight. We have all day to get a foretaste of Venice preparing herself for Carnival. Our guides to the Venice Carnival are a young couple, Marco and Sofia. We've all been invited to the Titian Ball, one of the most extravagant masquerades of the carnival. Travelling by water, as everyone in Venice must do, we follow Marco and Sofia as they arrive in Venice to prepare themselves for the ball. We enter the Grand Canal, the watery main street of Venice. The very special magic of this floating city envelops us. Venice, la Serenissima, the Serene Republic, was made rich by medieval bankers. In the Renaissance, it grew to be one of the most powerful cities in the world. Venetians were determined it would be one of the most beautiful too. Today, most of its power has faded, but none of its beauty. As we glide down its elegant canals, we can't help succumbing to the grace of this extraordinary city. We follow Marco and Sofia to Venice's most famous carnival outfitter, Nicolao. For all those looking for a costume, his workshop is always the first stop. Here there is every costume imaginable: medieval, Renaissance, Regency, grotesque, you name it, he's got it. After Marco and Sofia have put the finishing touches to their magnificent 17th century costumes, they head out into the city's main square, the Piazza San Marco. The masquerade is in full swing. With all the fun, it's easy to forget that behind the fancy dress exterior of Carnival there is a serious purpose. Carnival is a very old ritual of the Christian Holy Calendar. It marks the beginning of Lent, the period of religious fasting leading up to Easter. The age-old idea of Carnival was to be a cathartic release of tensions, to prepare people for the solemn observances of Lent. For a moment, concealed in costumes and masks, people become whatever they want. The rich become poor.
the poor become rich, and almost anything goes. Carnival has always been and still is a time for transgression. Perhaps the most important part of the carnival costume is the mask. Some are beautiful, some grotesque. It doesn't matter. The one rule of the carnival masquerade is that everyone be disguised and anonymous. As Marco or Sophia choose their masks, they're doing what carnival goers have done for centuries. Finally, they're ready for the ball. It's in keeping with the style of the evening to go by one of Venice's legendary boat taxis, a gondola. Finally, in the distance, we see the lights of the Renaissance Palazzo where the masked ball is being held. The lanterns are burning, boats are hovering, and the other guests are arriving. So let's join them, leave the 21st century behind, and with Marco and Sophia step back 300 years into the Titian Ball, heart of the Venice Carnival. Venice could keep the 21st century at bay for a few hours, but not forever. As the next day dawns, the revelers have gone home, and Venice becomes its serene self once again. At least until the following night, when the masquerades will start all over again. Carnival still has a few days to run, but another journey beckons. Our next destination lies far to the south, across the Mediterranean Sea, land of the Pharaohs, Egypt. 5,000 years ago, from this parched landscape arose one of the most remarkable civilizations the world has ever seen. Still marvel at the sophistication, the power, and the beauty of ancient Egypt. It's March, and the baking heat of summer has not yet descended on the desert. We've boarded the river cruiser, which is going to take us on a very special journey into the heartland of ancient Egypt. We're on our way to Luxor, once called Thebes, and to the Valley of the Kings, the great necropolis of the pharaohs. There, a remarkable tomb has been opened in a special preview for us. Our boat is a
faithful replica of the elegant cruisers of the 1920s and 30s. No roughing it on this trip. We're going to arrive in style.
We're travelling in luxury on our boat, but we're in fact retracing the path of countless ancient Egyptians who made the same journey thousands of years before the birth of Christ. Perhaps they were taking the produce of their fields to the markets of the great city. Perhaps they were on their way to one of the great ceremonies for Amun-Ra, the sun god, whose bountiful energy brought their crops to fruition. We glide downstream. We experience the first great secret of Egyptian civilization's astonishing might and longevity. The single river running like a silver thread through the desert. The Nile. This mighty river is something of a miracle. For over 6,400 kilometers, the waters of the Nile wind their way from the African lakes, which are their source, northwards towards the Mediterranean Sea. On their way, they transform an otherwise barren wasteland into an agricultural paradise. The Nile blessed Egypt with fertile land, easy transport, and a ready-made trade link to the rest of the world. This remarkable river is the main reason that Egypt became the greatest power of the ancient world. Today, many Egyptians depend on the Nile, just as their ancestors did over 3,000 years ago. Finally, the captain of our boat guides us into the river port, which is our destination. Luxor. In Luxor, we discover is a thriving modern city. But all around it are the traces of the grander and much, much older city. Thebes, capital of the ancient Egyptian Empire. It was here in the Temple of Karnak that the ancient Egyptians paid homage to Amun-Ra, the sun god. They built Karnak on a scale to match the grandeur of nature. For over 13 centuries, this was the center of the religious and intellectual life of the ancient world. These massive stones seem to echo with the whispered devotion and passionate debates of long-dead priests and scholars. Their arguments, presumably, were about the core ideas of Egyptian culture, and there's no better way to explore these than to visit the astonishing necropolis to which they gave rise, the Valley of the Kings. Ancient Egyptians were obsessed with the mysteries of death and the eternal afterlife in which they so fervently believed. The Valley of the Kings is their monument to those mysteries. As we enter this desolate valley, it's hard to believe it contains the massive tombs of 64 pharaohs, all carefully buried beneath the featureless sand to hide them from the eyes of the grave robbers. Each tomb was filled with priceless treasures and the replicas of everything the pharaohs would need in the afterlife. The treasure is long gone, but a visit to one of these remarkable sepulchres can still allow us to appreciate the breathtaking grandeur of the pharaoh's obsession with the afterlife. This is the tomb of Seti I, one of the greatest of ancient pharaohs. He died in 1278 BC. His tomb has been closed to the public for 15 years for renovations, but it has been opened for us in a special preview. As we penetrate the once hidden tunnel, our eyes are greeted by a labyrinth of carved chambers, each festooned with hieroglyphs telling of Seti's deeds and the symbols of the gods who would look after him in the land of the dead. Looking as if they could have been made just yesterday, these figures were in fact painted over 3,000 years ago. The outstretched wings of vultures, messengers of the dead, would escort Seti to the afterlife. The ibis-headed Thoth, god of wisdom. Osiris, god of the underworld. And Anubis, protector of the dead. All the beings who would accompany Seti for all eternity. Behind the intricate wonders of the world of the pharaohs lay another reality, harsher and less beautiful. It was this reality which gave rise to the remarkable ancient Odyssey we're about to follow. The accomplishments of ancient Egypt may have been remarkable, but the human price was high. Egypt of the pharaohs was a despotic society. Its rulers ruthlessly suppressed dissent. One of the many groups oppressed by the pharaohs were the Hebrews. In fact, it was under Seti I that some of the worst repression happened. Not long after his death, a young Hebrew child was born at Thebes, whose name was Moses. In a thicket of bulrushes, it is written, abandoned baby Moses was found floating in a reed basket by an Egyptian princess. Raised to be a leader and outraged by the oppression of his people, Moses vowed to lead them out of Egypt to the Promised Land. As Passover approaches, we're following that legendary exodus across the burning sands of the Sinai to a place where today they are commemorating the flight of Moses and the Hebrews, the holy city of Jerusalem.
Holy,
This is the Passover Seder, the ritual meal with which modern-day Jews every year commemorate the journey of Moses' people out of Egypt and their deliverance from slavery.
יש פסוק בשיר השירים, תחת התפוח אור ארתיך, כרפס.
It's the founding story of the Jewish faith. And as we sit down with the Levin family, we listen to the songs and prayers of that journey.
נתחיל להגיד את הסימנים, ואחרי הסימנים נתקדם על. המצה עוד יותר למטה נקראת המצה של ישראל. אנחנו לוקחים את המצה האמצעית, אנחנו משאירים כמו כל שבת את שני המצות האלה.
They eat matzah, unleavened bread, to remind themselves how the Israelites fled Egypt so quickly. The bread had no time to rise. Bitter herbs recall the pain of slavery. Sweet caroset, a paste of apples, walnuts, and sweet wine symbolizes the taste of freedom. We have arrived in Jerusalem at an amazing time of year. As soon as we walk out into the street, we are reminded that this is a holy city not just for Jews, but for Christians and Muslims as well. For the next 3 days we're going to explore Jerusalem in all its astonishing cultural and religious diversity. A holy city, not to one, but 3 world religions. There is nowhere else quite like it on earth. Passover comes to an end, yet another grand religious festival is just beginning. Easter, the moment when Christians celebrate the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. This is the holiest moment of the Christian ritual calendar. To join in the Easter processions on the Via Dolorosa is quite a magical experience. This is where they say Christ walked with his cross on his way to the crucifixion. And today, Easter Friday, thousands of Christians from different sects all over the globe have come to retrace his steps. Crosses, like the one Jesus carried, and they commemorate every stop he made along the way. The place is known as Stations of the Cross, where Jesus saw his mother, where the cross was taken from his shoulders, where he fell and placed his hand on the wall to steady himself. Finally, we arrive at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which marks the place of Golgotha, where Christ was crucified and laid in his tomb. We wait, with all the other pilgrims, for the church to be unlocked. Then join the throng streaming into this most sacred of Christian places. Over the 3 days of Easter, the Holy Sepulchre is packed. The rituals and celebrations of Christ just never stop. It's breathtaking. Services are conducted in every corner of the building almost simultaneously. Processions file through the crowd. With fire, Orthodox Christians symbolize the spread of the Holy Spirit on earth. almost jostle to touch the relics of Christ's last moment on earth. Women wipe perfumes and oils from the stone, representing the one on which Christ's body was laid, hoping to take away with them some vestige of his sacredness. Every nook and cranny of the Holy Sepulchre is turned over to the remembrance of Christ. Even the roof, where Coptic Christians from Ethiopia hold their Easter vigil. It is not just at special times like Easter that the Holy City is alive with religious observance. Next day, as the celebrations of Easter Saturday continue in the Christian quarter, a short walk away in the Jewish quarter, we have entered another world. It is a normal Sabbath, and Orthodox Jews are gathering at the Western Wall, sometimes called the Wailing Wall, to pray and read from the Jewish holy book, the Torah. This is the last vestige of the Jewish temple destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans to stamp out Jewish rebellion. 2,000 years later, it is still one of Judaism's holiest places. About 90 meters away, overlooking the Wailing Wall, is one of the holiest sites of Islam. The place from which the Prophet Muhammad is said to have ascended into heaven, the Dome of the Rock. Islam is as firmly rooted here as Judaism and Christianity. The fact that the three great monotheistic religions all view Jerusalem as their holy city is why, of course, civil strife so regularly descends upon it. In Jerusalem, political animosities can be as intense as the religious passions that underlie them. But this is no time to dwell on the enmity that divides people. Jerusalem is a city of faith, and we want to join in one last celebration to remind ourselves of how people can find peace in their faith also. We've come to a legendary hill on the edge of Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives. It's just before dawn on Easter Sunday, the day Christians believe Jesus rose into heaven from this very place. Pilgrims have gathered here to pray. It's a moment of exquisite peace and serenity. Off in the distance, as the sun rises, we can see the magnificent Judean desert. A spectacular view, little changed since Jesus himself might have stood here and observed it. It is into this landscape that our journey is going to take us next. Across Judea and into the breathtaking Arabian deserts of Jordan, where our final destination will be one of the most beautiful archaeological sites in the world, the lost city of Petra. We have a lot of things to see on the way. The first
is one of the strangest lakes in the world. Lying right on the border of Israel and Jordan, the Dead Sea. Lying a full 400 meters below sea level in baking deserts, the Dead Sea loses almost 10 million tons of water a day by evaporation. This concentrates the already salty and mineral-rich water to such an extent that no living thing can either survive in it or sink in it. A swim in the Dead Sea, which is warm as soup, is certainly unusual, but hardly refreshing, so there's no need to linger. It's time to move on further south, deep into the deserts of Jordan. As our four-wheel drive vehicle enters this spectacular landscape, pinnacles and broken ramparts of rock rear out of the baking sands on all sides. Bitterly cold at night. During the day, the desert often swelters with temperatures of over 40 degrees Celsius. This is a tough land, but there is one remarkable group of people who have lived here since the dawn of history, famed for their ferocity in war and loyalty in friendship. The desert nomads called the Bedouin. Entering the territory of the Hawittats, one of the largest Bedouin tribes. These were the people whose forefathers fought beside Lawrence of Arabia in the wars against the Turks which liberated the Arab world from the Ottoman Empire. Today, most Hawittats still live much as they did in Lawrence's day. They've been alerted to our arrival and greet us with their legendary hospitality. In a scene that has changed little over the centuries, they have pitched their large tents in the sand. Their animals have been tethered and their fires lit. They invite us to join them for a glass of mint tea, the drink of welcome that accompanies almost every Bedouin social occasion. This austere desert and the aristocratic Bedouin who wander it exert a special pull on the imagination. Lawrence of Arabia was just one of many outsiders to fall in love with these deserts. There is only one way to experience their magic to the full. A camel ride. As we sway gently along on our majestic steeds, it's impossible not to feel the allure of the glowing sands of the Arabian desert. Final destination in Jordan is the most remarkable sight to really experience the special beauty of this land. Hundreds of years before the birth of Christ, an advanced civilization lived here in these rocky deserts. They were called the Nabateans, and they flourished on trade between the Mediterranean and the Far East. They built one of the most
cities in the history of the world, carved from the solid glowing rocks of the desert. Here nature and man joined forces to create a place which dazzles the imagination like no other. Petra. 2,000 years ago, this was a city of priests, craftsmen and traders from all corners of the ancient Middle East. Greeks, Egyptians, Romans, Syrians and Persians all rubbed shoulders in Petra's bustling streets. For almost 1,000 years this city flourished, outliving the Roman Empire but finally succumbing to a series of devastating earthquakes in the 7th and 8th centuries. Today, only 20% of the ancient city has been restored, but as we explore the astonishing ruins of Petra's grand buildings and amphitheatres, we can appreciate how magnificent this city must once have been. Our visit to this extraordinary site brings to an end the first leg of our journey of a lifetime, which has brought us all the way from Paris across Europe, North Africa and the Middle East to this remarkable place. Ahead lie more spectacular destinations in Africa and Asia.